He muted himself.
You were kind of mumbled, but I could hear a little bit.
We can hear you now. That's good.
Now I can hear you better.
Great, great. We were just talking about how you were out fishing, and somehow I think Shelley was the one that told you needed to dress up. If you zoom in, you have to wear a white shirt and tie.
Yeah, I still have my fishing pants and rubber, but
Well, good job, good job. All right, well, we'll call our meeting to order tonight and get ourselves started. Thank you. I know you have a tight schedule, Bob, and I appreciate you working to make yourself available for us.
sure.
Okay, I would like to start by doing our roll call for our commission members that are present tonight. To my right, we have Shelley Nazer, Vice Chair, myself, Michael Fortune, Chair, and to my left, Bob Washburn. And we have excused Julie, who had some conflict of schedules and so forth, so she is excused from the meeting tonight. And there's Joe Chambers. It's great to see you, Joe. No, you're just fine. We did wanted to invite you, since you're already standing, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you don't mind. Perfect.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We will go ahead and move on, where we are now reviewing the minutes and for approval of our minutes from our last meeting in May. And I believe our two scholars, you probably had a chance to go through it.
Yeah, it looks good to me.
Awesome.
Didn't see anything.
Everything looked good.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
good.
Shelley, you think so? Everybody okay?
Good job.
Well, if everything looks good, give me a second here. I would entertain a motion regarding our minutes.
I move,
Go ahead.
I move that we accept the minutes for the 22nd of May. Is that the date, right date?
Yep, May 22nd. I have a motion by Bob Washburn to accept the minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Shelley Nazer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, voting was unanimous. Bob, were you voting there? You're okay, good, all right. We are gonna move on to our public comment section. And I believe that you're probably here for your item on the agenda. So, Ty, do we have any comments or anything from, nothing's come in? Okay. No emails, no calls, no last minute. That's awesome. Thank you. And perfect. Yep. So with no public comments, no information received, we will go ahead and close that portion of the public comments. And we will move on to our second item, which is item number 2, the CH Champlin LLC partial rezone public hearing. This is where the Planning Commission will take comments and questions from the public regarding an application for a partial rezone of a parcel located in the general area of 595 West, 300 South. Applicants seek to rezone a portion of parcel 03-002-0007 from commercial highway to mixed use. So with that being said, we open it, but we have no one in the audience to voice any comments. And I don't believe we've had anything come in, just checking again. Okay, looks like we have nothing. So with that,
Don't know that that's sufficient in the minutes. I'm not saying it isn't, I'm not saying it is. I just don't know if we need to formally open it for public comment.
We generally formally open for public comment
okay,
and so and then you invite anybody. And then formally close when nobody stands up, if nobody
Okay.
stands up. So,
all right, thank you. I would formally open for public comments regarding item number 2, the Champlin LLC partial rezone. And invite anyone that would like to make comments either online or in person, which we have no one in person.
We have Mr. Ken Dudley, but
Yes, he's waiting to speak.
Yes.
It's his part. Well, that being the case, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And record that they had no comments. With that, we would move on to our legislative action items, which is item number 3, the CH Champion LLC partial rezone. The Planning Commission will review, discuss, and make a recommendation to the City Council regarding an application for a partial rezone of a parcel located in the general area of the 595 West, 300 South. The applicant seek to rezone a portion of the parcel 03002-0007 from commercial highway to mixed use. And with that, I would invite Scarlett to come up and just give us a summary or review again of where we're at here and the staff recommendations, thoughts.
This staff report is actually the same report that I gave at the
Okay.
last meeting. It does have the diagram it does have the parcel map and the diagram of their plans for the commercial portion of the piece
Okay,
in the packet this time, and I apologize that they got omitted last time, but they are in there. This piece is located it's on 300 South, just east of Highway 165. It's located between Judge's Car Wash and the Fox Hollow development. If anybody happens to be listening or turns in later, to help orient where they are. Mixed use and commercial highway. You can do everything in all of the things in commercial highway, you can do in mixed use. But mixed use also gives the ability for residential development. In fact, mixed use requires residential development. Mixed use also allows a little bit more than commercial highway. It allows business offices, dental clinics, licensed professionals, schools, and quite any non-sales tax producing business pretty much would be allowed in the mixed use zone, where the commercial highway is restricted to the majority of sales tax producing businesses. Depending on how the mixed use is done, the density for what we term as horizontal mixed use is 25 units per net acre. And if they go vertical, which means horizontal, there's a commercial building and then somewhere adjacent, close to, but not attached necessarily, there's a residential building. If it's vertical, the commercial and the residential are in the same building. So we give them a bump for that. The point of the mixed use is to encourage walkable communities. Mixed use does fit within our general plan. Our general plan, the key initiatives are a sense of place, green infrastructure, fiscal responsibility, a multimodal city, economic development, and various housing opportunities. And mixed use can be applied to quite a few of those. Mixed use is also something that works into our moderate income housing plan, because it does talk about zoning for densities necessary to facilitate the production of moderate income housing. I'm not saying that's what those
Right.
facilities will end up being, but it does provide opportunity to have higher densities for residential units. And it also it says to create or allow for and reduce regulations related to multifamily residential dwellings in compatible scale and form with single-family detached residential dwellings and located in walkable communities within residential mixed-use zones. That's our objective number 4. So it works with that. Then our our state code, we've gone through the process. We had this as a study item. Now you had a public hearing. The next step, after you discuss and decide as a commission how you feel about it, would be to make a recommendation to the city council. So we have followed the process in our code and in the state code.
Thank you very much, Scarlett.
Okay,
Anybody have any questions for Scarlett?
I don't think so.
The one thing I have, Scarlett, is I was gonna ask, in the mixed use zone, do we require any percentage?
No.
I know it can be a mixture of these things, but I wasn't sure.
no one use can be more than 50%.
Perfect.
And there does have to be residential component. So if, and when we talk about commercial, we kind of look at that in 2 categories, kind of the commercial highway district category, and then the office, the commercial general district type category.
Okay.
So even though it's commercial, if somebody came in and they had a restaurant and somebody came in and they had a doctor's office, we wouldn't count them as the same type of commercial. We would count them. So
2 different types.
yes, 2 different types.
So the restaurant could be 50%, but then that other commercial piece would be another separate, and then there could also be housing,
Yeah,
which was kind of like what was presented before in the study.
right.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm the 50% part. Thank you.
And then as part of it too, because of the design factor that we did, and we encouraged the walking and the multimodal, they'll have to plan for electric vehicle charging
Sure.
stations and bicycle maintenance and parking areas for bicycles as well.
Okay,
That's pretty
That's
much the
great.
difference.
we don't have any requirement that it be 3 uses or more.
No, just,
Is
it's
it
gotta be 2.
2, at least 2?
Mhm.
Okay, that's why I just
Yep.
wanted clarification. Thank you very much.
Alrighty.
Anyone, any last minute things? Kent, if you would like, we'd be happy to invite you up, and if just for the recording and record, if you would state your name and welcome to the planning commission meeting.
Thank you, Kent Dunkley. I'm representing the potential buyer of this parcel. And I think this fits in this, if it's rezoned mixed use, I think what we're after is commercial. That's sales tax generating. The buyer would like to build a office building for himself or for himself and or other people, and have a residential mix in there as well. The number one goal is not residential. It is not high density housing. It's commercial,
Mhm.
office, and towards the back, residential. If I could just I have a talk, if I could take just
Sure.
a minute, but you see on the map. And if you remember from when we were here a couple of weeks ago, the bottom on the map was a diagram of a restaurant that we were really hoping would come to Providence. About 2 days after our last meeting, I was on that property site with the owner of this restaurant chain, and it won't work for them. The reason it won't work for them, believe it or not, is it's not on Highway 165. I looked prior to the meeting, went across the highway on 1700 South, looked back, I thought, that's pretty good access.
Right,
You could see whatever building goes there, you could see it, but this person said simply, it isn't on the main road. It won't work for us. I don't know if he's written it off completely. I'm still trying to get him. I would love to have his business in Providence somewhere, but it has to be on 165 and the beyond the stoplight where Zions Bank is too far to the south for this particular business. So we did a lot of work trying to, we told them we would cater to you. You have first pick on the property and then we'll build around it. But
right,
so far that hasn't worked out. I spoke with another real estate commercial broker and he said about this situation, he said, Kent, commercial believes in Main Street. That is why it runs from Providence to Smithfield. Even though we were just behind Judge's Car Wash,
right.
a quarter of a block off from the main road, that didn't work for this commercial venture. I'd like to share a quote with you that I found, and I hope this is okay. We live in a world where winning is everything. There are not many rewards for second place. We are taught from childhood the absolute necessity of excelling, of being the best in the class, the finest on the block, the most successful in the industry. End of quote. We have been taught that, and we teach our children, our employees, and our associates to succeed, to be the best that we can be. I don't believe this teaching ever includes the following to our children or to someone else. Hey, you're really not talented or good at anything. Shoot for 4th or 5th place because others are shooting for 1st place. Remember, we don't want to be the best. I don't think that's how we operate. Not once in my real estate career has a commercial buyer, retail buyer, come to me and said, Kent, we want you to find us a commercial lot that's tucked away back behind everything, because we really don't want to be seen. We don't want to be accessible. That doesn't happen. And if I can use another personal example, Big O Tire first met me on 1700 South on the west side of 165, looking at a 1 acre lot.
Right,
You know where Big O Tire is now.
right,
That wasn't good enough, even though it doesn't make sense to me because you can see it. Lots of people drive by it. They
yeah,
wanted to be on the main road. The subject property is a good site and may work for some commercial uses, but it is not the most desirable site. We hope you will consider the zone request. That's about all I have to say. The mixed use, if you have questions for me, I'd love to answer any that I could. I just want to emphasize that the goal here is not high density housing.
I have a couple of questions about that, but I'll ask my colleagues, see if they have anything first that they'd like to ask or comment to make.
Since this hasn't come to fruition the way you'd planned, is there any reason to think that you might be coming back for a different kind of a rezone if somebody else comes along?
Not with this particular buyer, no.
Not
Because this-
that buyer, but I mean, if that buyer, assume that buyer is gone now. Is this the final kind of zone that you want for that property? no
For
matter-
me in my life right now, it is. I'm not working with another buyer that wants that property and has plans to do something different with it. This is the only person that I'm dealing with. I don't know if that's an answer to your question, that we
No.
hope if we get the rezone, then the transaction will take place. And this is the way he would like it to pan out.
I think to address Bob's maybe kind of clarifying with you said that the restaurant didn't work, but that's not the buyer.
No,
The buyer is different than
That's
the
correct.
tenant. And you said the tenant may not work out, but the same buyer is present and still interested in when they buy, they're interested in the office building. They were just
Correct.
thinking the restaurant might be an added tenant. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, I
The
didn't know
buyer,
You understood that same point.
No, I wasn't, that's kind of where I'm getting to. is that
okay,
If, I mean, this, what you had planned isn't happening the way you planned. Are we gonna, if we were to recommend that we change the zone gets changed, and then somebody comes along and says, oh, well, it'd be nice if that was commercial highway. Does the fact that that potential buyer and that situation isn't going to work, going to affect
The
you're not
future
gonna
of the
come back
property?
to the well and say, hey, we need to change it again.
with this particular buyer, who is not the who is not the restaurateur, it's a private individual. We were hoping, I've been working with Culver's for about 2.5 years.
Thank you
Uh-oh.
for sharing that with me. Act like nobody heard that.
Heard what?
Did I say that? I didn't say that. I'm very sorry that I said that. I've been working with them for about 2.5 years, and that they wanted Judge's Corner, but the timing wasn't right for them. In the meantime, so we've been staying in touch. In the meantime, another individual saw this property, has interest in buying it. He knows that he has to do commercial, and not one use can be more than 50%. He knows that buying this property, it's got to be sales tax generating, and he understands that. He wants to move his accounting practice here, and I hope I don't slip on his name too, but, and there are a couple of other smaller businesses that want just a satellite retail outlet that we're working with and have been for a while, and a dentist and so on. And they do want to put some housing on the site too, but the main goal is not housing, it's to develop all these things. Now, if that doesn't work, I don't know that we'll get the restaurant company. It would be nice to have someone like that. I can tell you that highway commercial hasn't been an attractive thing in my life and in business with Providence, attracting companies to come and people. There's another property on the west side of Highway 165 that's for sale right now. If it wasn't zoned highway commercial, we would probably have an offer on it.
Can you elaborate on that? Why, I mean, mixed use, I mean, these are commercial companies and businesses, and they want to be on the highway.
But they don't want to be in Providence yet. And you look at Providence, and I get that we need commercial and we need sales tax. But if you look at Black Bear, Capriotti's, Palmer's Furniture, Edwards Furniture, we don't have a real good track record. And that's partly just because of the times, and things will expand and move south, and there's a new hotel plan for across by Les Schwab that's in Logan City, but things are creeping this way. But businesses and commercial want to be on the highway. They don't want to be on First East or First West. And if you just have to look at the corridor from here to Smithfield and you see that. So highway commercial, with the Ficus property, that would have sold years ago. Now it is sold, and it will fall into that category, the use that's going to come there. But people in my life are not clamoring, lining up to be in Providence City for a commercial use. Now we're hoping the name that slipped will end up here, and we'll know that in the next few days. Because we're still working with them, but sorry, that was a long.
Yeah.
No, that answers the question. Thank you.
And I'll just comment, just a little, I mean, I'm sure that you're aware of this. We do have those businesses. We have, and I'll name drop, we have Le Schwab, and that's not in Providence, but right nearby, and it's not on the highway, it's just behind Flourish.
But look at the road that it's on. It's on a main road.
Yeah, and I mean, but Third South where we're looking is a highly trafficked road.
It is a great lot, in my opinion, because all of the utilities are there. And a lot of lots don't have that, so I agree with you, and I was really hopeful that we would get them. But it was just not on
Sure,
Highway
yeah.
165.
We do have two new restaurant pads as well, Chick-fil-A and another pad behind it, and they're not on the highway. Just something to consider.
But they're
Maybe
in a
get that
shopping,
combined.
they're in a,
There's the traffic. I think that's the thing about Les Schwab is you get the traffic into the Walmart.
and Chick-fil-A's got Macy's and everything else there, so.
Scarlett?
I think one thing, couple things to think about. In light of a couple of weeks ago, or a month ago, when you made a recommendation. This is already zoned so that that particular business could have come here. A couple things for the businesses to think about, access onto that highway is done. So they'll get Fish South. They've got the one that Craig is putting in,
Right.
but on the east side of the highway, there will be no more direct access. And so that's a UDOT. They not necessarily Providence, however, we do agree with it. To a large extent, because we don't want to create the unfortunate stuff that we had out. Between 14th North that UDOT has systematically done away with some of the drives and things like that. But I think the point is. This zoning, whether you were doing mixed or it was commercial highway, that business that's thinking that it's too far off the road. That could have come with either one.
Right.
But not the rest of what the developer wants
No,
to
not the
do.
rest, not the rest. I know that there was discussion about. Commercial businesses being willing to come back farther. And I think there are certain commercial businesses that will come back farther, but obviously there's still many that aren't.
Right.
So I do think if we were to take road counts on 1700 South now versus. Since the light and the right hand, or the left hand turn lane went in. I actually think that area has increased in traffic. Because now you're not backed up clear to
Right.
Second West to try and make a left hand turn, but I do think road counts would be helpful. But I do think it's important to know that there's not gonna be a lot of on highway accesses. So,
And that to consider the next parcel down. What the solution of that one is to have a back access that serves so they can be seen from the highway. But serviced off of it, cause they want seen, that's the large thing is they want seen and be visible on the highway. Even if you have to access back around, it's that visibility. People will come to you if they know you're there, but if you're too far hidden, they won't come. But I assume that's part of that issue. This one, with this rezone, this doesn't have another access from Fourth and Fifth and then have to fill in that. This property is somewhat, commercial in the front, that would be the natural for this property. If they have to have mixed use, they're not gonna be able to fit commercial on the back
Right.
on the south piece of the property. And they have the river that goes through this, so geography wise, the entrance is gonna be to the south of Judges into the south piece, which makes that a whole lot different commercial, and it needs that back alley, in order to service those ones. Otherwise, if you shrink that too much, you'll lose the footprint of ability of these kind of buildings. But this one, you have mixed use, or you have a high density housing next to it.
Right.
And then this is if they're gonna be required to have. A commercial component, a business or commercial component, it's gotta be on Third South. They're not gonna be able to change. Too much, cause that's the only spot that those businesses go. So then the question comes is, do you leave it as it is commercial general, which would allow for the
Commercial highway.
proposed? But can you get commercial general? And I think that might be the point is, can you get commercial general between the business on Third
front.
South and the creek, can you get something to draw back there? If it's a accounting office, people come a little off the road to come to that, if that's what's proposed. And then
Because
housing,
that's where they're wanting to go. That's where they're planning to go.
right, and then that housing, if this were a through street and didn't have the creek. Then to keep it commercial makes sense, understanding it's a timing problem.
Right.
That if you want and need development today. People can develop high density housing today. But if we want to plan and prepare for the future, when that development does start to come this way, has it come fully this way? No, but it will start to creep and eat and work this way. Nothing's moving in Millville.
Right.
It will move here much quicker than it will move there. But it will be slow, but you have to reserve some for commercial. But the question on this one, I believe the question is if commercial is required and a portion of either commercial or office is required in a mixed use. If that's required, then the question is what's the best use for this gray piece that is in the back?
Right.
Is it residential next to the townhouses that are there? Is it commercial general as currently zoned? And that's really where the question for you becomes, in my opinion. Is that fair?
Yeah,
Just say one way or the other. I
that's
did-
good, Ryan.
But at that point, it's what is the best and highest use and I mean, is it gonna be 50 years before it develops as commercial because it has that restriction in? Or is it gonna be 5 years? I think some of that really, you've got to look inside your knowledge and figure that, but mine is, keep in mind. The highway, not the highway, but 300 South, which is a major collector road, it is the
Right.
second largest road. Well, third largest and busiest road in our city, or at least planned to be. From the highway, we have our one arterial road that's first north. Third South is our next
Right.
planned busiest road that we have and expect to have inside of Providence City in the next 100 years. That is the busy road. I'm happy to sell that to somebody to come and say, wanna know.
Somebody that we don't know.
Something that we don't know, but that is gonna be a busy road, but how far off that? And because of the landlock of the stream, is there going to be more come, or does that reset? And what do you want it to be developed as?
Well, and then how long would it have to sit? Like we've seen in other places, even just up the road right here. Zone commercial, but, you know, ultimately to get something, it was switched over to the housing.
To the mixed use, the one
Yeah.
over here by the
Well,
movie
across
theater?
isn't just, no, across the road here
golf
where we put
course.
in, yeah. Where the
Where the
miniature
golf
golf
course
went gone and and that gentleman said, you know, for years I've tried to get a commercial buyer for it. And then, so the opportunity for this and, you know, he was able to do it and move on and I think it fits just fine. And I also look at Macy's, I look at, in the strip mall there, you know, I've been here in Providence, in this location 16 years. And really up until maybe a year ago or this year even, some of those spaces were vacant for all those years. You know, and I mean, that's a hard thing to have somebody take a hit on.
But there are some of those starting to develop now.
Yeah, they are, and there's people in those, I think all of them are there, that kind of thing like that. I do agree. I had a question,
Okay,
Joe, did you have something? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I do have something. but-
Okay.
but not-
My question was, overall, I think we're looking at just under 3 acres, correct?
2.5.
Just, okay,
Mhm.
about 2.5, okay. I guess what I'm trying to look at is, one option, if we change the zoning, could be that the office building could go in the front on the road. Because you have to have one or the other. And I like the idea of the 3, but realistically, if we change the zone, it could be that the office building is there and then 50% is housing. So I guess what I'm curious of is, it would be, I would really like, I think the commercial aspect of whether it's a restaurant or something that really thrives on traffic and that, be there in the front, and then the office building behind it. Then you have a lesser part of a footprint. We're not changing. And 50% of it isn't gonna be housing, is what I'm trying to get at, I guess. So,
I need to ask Scarlett a question.
sure,
I didn't think we could just have an office building and housing. I thought we had to have something that was sales tax generating.
Not in mixed.
Okay, well, I learned.
We encourage that. We love to have sales tax producing and, you know.
We'd like you to
shops.
believe that it's.
Well, I've made 2 mistakes so far tonight.
that's the thing to me, that's,
For either.
yeah. That's what I would love to see. I think that's the right fit. And I think that the housing, because what else is gonna go back there and how long would it take to get back there?
So you say the right fit is for commercial on
Up
the,
front,
on the front and mixed between the business and resident in the back.
right,
This wasn't the application, but just curious. That could potentially be achieved by leaving the portion that is presented as commercial and rezoning the other part, which doesn't need, which
the
is
other
just the
part
office
mixed use.
as mixed use, which allows residential
Yeah,
and general office or commercial.
right,
That's not what is being asked. I will
Right.
clarify, that's not what's being asked.
Yeah.
But if that's what you felt, you have the ability to make a recommendation of what you think it is. And you might have the ability to say yes or no,
Yeah.
or modify what that recommendation is. You can take any of those 3 options.
it's kind of locking in what is conceptually being pursued, but also addresses, you know, you could say, well, we didn't get the deal that we wanted, or he wants me to take him somewhere else. So it sells the property to somebody else and all they want is housing, you know, that kind of thing, or big at the 50% portion being the housing. How do you feel about that?
I don't think I can say without talking to my client about
yeah.
that. We were working under the thought that it had to be commercial and it had to be 3 different uses.
Well, it has to be 2.
That's what I learned
Yeah,
tonight. I
yeah.
thought it had to be 3. And so we were of course, as a buyer and a developer, you want to get a return on your investment as soon as you can. And so if this company were to come and they would have bought the front and he plans to build an accounting office anyway, I mean, it's a home run already, you know, and so I don't know. What I do need to go back to one thing Ryan touched on, and there is a commercial lot between Discount Tire and IHC on the highway on 165. That's been for sale forever.
Right,
It has no access. Highway access. You have to go around Discount Tire, back through. It's a great piece of property. It's very visible, but commercial people don't think it's.
it wouldn't have
prime.
the access, so I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So it's that little alleyway.
It's
where
the
everybody thinks
alleyway
they ought to
where
be
a
at.
foundation truck and other
Yeah.
trucks are parked, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's the
It
access.
actually is a city street. It's a 66-foot right of way.
yeah,
Let's improve on that.
so that's interesting. That's probably why it hasn't sold. I mean, everybody that
Well,
wants to be on the highway, you want people to turn in and come right to your business. That'd be interesting. Have to have somebody in a golf cart out there say, follow me, take you around the corner, but
Sign spinner.
yes.
I agree with Ryan, I think, and Scarlett, I think Third South is a great street.
Yeah.
Do we call it a great street if it becomes busier? It's got good accessibility and exposure.
Yeah.
It's
It's interesting because, not that I know what company was looking for the commercial part anymore. But they're kind of up off the main road possibly.
But
other-
look at the corner that they're on off
Yeah,
the
a
main
lot of
road.
traffic. There's a lot of traffic and you have the university and all of that. So
Lowe's
I
and Home
agree.
Depot also decided to be in that same
Yeah,
area.
anchors right there.
Right.
So, yeah,
So again, it comes back to your question, and if this doesn't work, you know, is the potential buyer willing to go ahead and buy the property? With highway commercial on the front, the way the plan is drawn, and mixed use behind it, and I don't know the answer to that right now.
it'd be interesting because if you say, well, we looked for a restaurant for this pad, which I think the traffic and everything, I think that would be a good fit. But certainly would be a good fit and that kind of stuff and draw more traffic there, especially a national name organization, but
I think there may be thoughts that the owner wants to do another 140 townhouses right there. And he doesn't.
yeah.
This was his plan and he was okay with commercial, so maybe that's the answer. He was
Well, and part
okay
of
with
it was-
commercial.
Cause if it's just 2.5 acres and the largest portion could be 50%. And we're 25 units per acre,
That'd be 25 units.
yeah, unless we went vertical. Right, Scarlett? So I mean, there's not gonna be a lot of housing back there.
No, and I'm sorry,
Yeah.
we don't have a concept that
Yeah,
I can
no,
show
that's
you
okay.
exactly how it's
Yeah.
gonna pan
Yeah.
out. But the thought of vertical is a possibility.
Right.
With storefronts down below and then townhouses
Yeah.
above, or apartments above, or whatever it would be that you build above, like they did over on 485 West
Right.
behind Macy's.
Right. Well, and that's, I think, I think from all the experience, everything we've seen, it's gonna get people in there by having that housing. That's what's gonna be developed and successful first, unless you've got people ready to go. He builds his office or another restaurant comes in, or that particular one. But,
It also helps that whether they will allow it or not, but it also helps that, you know, with townhouses and large density housing. We have found that parking isn't, so when you have a restaurant or an office during the day in a mixed use. They are busy during the day and people in that same mixed use residential side are gone during the day. And then at night, that swaps, so there is room for them to park at night when the businesses are not. And if they can work that, and a mixed use should work that.
right,
Being working together on that. Keep in mind that, you know, it sounds like he doesn't have a set direction, you'd have to go back. But yours is a recommending, so
Yeah.
depending on what you recommend. That would give, if your recommendation is anything different than the proposal. At least he has another opportunity to talk at that when it comes to the city council and to use whatever your recommendation is, whatever that might be. If that differs from the application or matches, then he still has the opportunity to speak to that when it goes to the
Sure.
city council and they'll be the final vote one way or the other, and they can take your recommendation, not take your recommendation, or modify it as well, and then he can make a reject it.
Would we have to have another hearing if we recommend something different than what he's asking for?
Can I not have another hearing? I think
think you have to have another
moving
hearing.
forward, I probably should stay on track with the
Right.
mixed use request.
right, okay,
If what will work in highway commercial on the front part will work in mixed use, then I would say let's just stick
Stick with what you
with
have.
mixed use.
Joe, you had a question, I believe, or?
Carl wants to.
I just wanna remind you that mixed use has some different requirements. There's open space requirements, and so if you start taking away too much. You probably won't get anything really that's desirable, because they'll have to have a open space component in it. Plus their design, plus their two different uses, so. In all reality, going much smaller than 2 acres is going to be difficult to really make a good mixed use project work.
So
By the
that's
time you
the,
figure parking requirements, open space requirement, architectural requirements, I mean, that's a lot not that it can't be done. But it may not be what you're, in your mind, you're thinking
Yeah,
you're
what
gonna
do you
have.
think? Keeping one part commercial and the other part mixed use. That's a
Can I
great
just
point.
change one comment?
Sure.
I would like to just say that I hope we could put something together that would be desirable.
Okay.
Oh,
Sorry, Scarlett, but
no,
I,
I'm sure
I
you
need to
would.
say that, yeah.
No, I'm sure you would. I'm just saying, as it gets, as you try and condense it, sometimes trying to fit everything in,
Right,
you will do it, you'll do a great project, but it may not be what you had anticipated if you had just a little bit more room. That's all I'm saying.
okay.
And I lost my map here. Give me just a second. I wanted to see, because it goes to the creek.
It goes to
It's not like the other neighboring piece that goes on the other side of the creek.
The way we've drawn it out, yeah, and
Yeah.
it is preliminary, but the way we've drawn it out with Civil Solutions is it would go from 300 south to the north side of the creek.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Just a second, Joe.
Yeah, thanks. I have mixed feelings on it in the sense that,
Mixed use feelings.
you know, I would like to see the sales tax base preserved as a citizen. But I can remember a situation down in Pleasant View where I represented 7 property owners that had property at Highway 89 and 2700 North. And if you know what that intersection looks like right now, it's popping all the way along 2700. And the city would not allow our clients to do anything other than commercial, but at the time, there was no track station there. There was no proposal for a track station. And the owners of the property, which included Bert Smith and Edwards, they were really frustrated with Pleasant View because Pleasant View was saying, we want this to be like Riverdale Road. They had this vision that all the sales tax base that Riverdale Road was generating down in Weber County. And we disconnected from the city. We kind of disconnected so that they could do with the property what they wanted to.
Right.
And as I look at it, the conflict I have is I'm really property rights oriented to the person who owns the property. It's their property. And I know there's a place for zoning, but if this is something that the owner wants and there's a demand for it, I don't know that people on the city council or the planning commission can look at our crystal ball to determine when the sales tax people, commercial retail that generates that is going to come to the city. And so, you know, I'm inclined to, if the property owner wants to do it, I'm inclined to vote in favor of it, but I sure would like to keep that as a citizen just for fiscal responsibility. But ours is a recommendation. The city council
Yes.
gets the tough job.
Thank you.
And by the way, I never do hear back on what the city council does with our recommendations. I guess I'm too lazy to pull up city council minutes. But when we,
Or you could watch it and see. Sometimes they're very, I think they take our recommendations pretty serious.
yeah, my wife only allows me to attend so many meetings. Bob. I have to get permission.
I think you have a city council that really leans on the recommendation of planning commission and the master plans. And we'll look at those two fairly heavily.
That's their job. I'm
So,
glad to hear that.
I think they appreciate the work you do. I know that they appreciate the work you do and know the difficulty that it oftentimes is. But you will see if you go back, you both attended those, but you'll see that oftentimes they will lean on that recommendation that you've given. So
I'm a little bit disappointed that there's no one here from the public that's interested in it.
if I were a neighbor living in those townhouses, I would be excited to have other ones so that there might be potential for more parking.
Absolutely.
That's my own
Let me
opinion.
give- I'm
And I
sorry.
really like the restaurant, although we
Yeah.
nameless to be named, that's in the top 4 or 5 for me, and so I'm a heavy one that I'd love to be able to help there, but that's just my own personal preference.
Did you have any?
No, I'm
Okay,
I'll save it for another time.
okay. Does anybody have any other questions for Kent? Any comments or questions or anything? Okay, thank you very
You bet.
much.
Thank you.
All right. What we'll do at this time is talk amongst ourselves and see what we think we want to do. We've talked a little, or I raised the idea of changing part of it this, part of it that, but they request the representative for the landowner is requesting, let's just keep it and look at it from the standpoint of mixed use. And go with it from there. And so what are your thoughts?
I think we should look at the application in front of us and move forward with the application as requested by
Okay.
the representative today.
Okay. How are your feelings about it? Do you,
I think it's a good spot.
Good
I really
spot.
do. I like the plan. I agree with Joe. I think I wish I could, rub my magic lamp and bring a commercial business, and hopefully maybe Mr. Dunkley can still do that for us. But if not, I think mixed use zone still fits in this location.
okay, thank you, Michelle, very much. Bob,
Now that I found the, which way this drawing is north, helps me out, but is this a sidewalk on this,
that little curve,
curb
Oh, on the back
piece there on the,
Yeah.
on the bottom side, on the south side?
Parking for Fox Hollow Townhomes.
for the neighboring property,
Oh,
the property lines, runs along it there.
oh, I see,
Yeah,
okay,
kind of a jog.
all right. I just wondered what that was. Yeah, I'm fine with, going forward with this,
Think it's a good fit.
yeah, I'd like to see something come in there and it makes sense to me.
Thank you very much.
I've
Joe,
already
Yeah.
spoken my thought.
and you really are torn because part of it is yes, an advocate for property rights, the owners and what they'd like to do. And at the same time, as a citizen, we want that tax base to constantly increase. So. All right,
How do you feel, Michael?
well. I like the idea of what they proposed and what we saw at our study item. And my thought was kind of trying to find a way that ensure that would happen, because I think that would be fantastic. But it's kind of us telling you what to do with your property to a degree.
Believe me, I would like to have it pan out the way we intended it.
Yeah,
It was
Well,
presented 2
yeah.
weeks ago.
so if we need to go protest or something at the other location, maybe we can do something like that. But my feelings are, I support it. I think that's a great spot if it's a restaurant, or even, if it ends up being the commercial building, professional building, something like that with maybe some smaller outlet things. I'd rather see both, but I do think the best fit, that it doesn't sit there for years like some of these other things have. For the housing, because we could use it in Providence. We could use more of that.
You do have Bob on video if you want to call on him.
Oh, yes.
Just-
I didn't forget about you. Can you hear us, Bob?
No, what have you guys been talking about? Yes, I've heard the whole conversation.
Bob, these 3 guys kicked into a bar.
Well, and I'll just say, I like the concept of the business, a restaurant or something in front. And it sounds like Kent and his client have developed a plan to be able to do that and have the business, have the accounting office and some housing. And so I still think the best solution is to make the front, I agree the back of that shouldn't be commercial. I don't think anybody's going to put a commercial business in the back of that property. But the front, I think there is potential still. And so I know this isn't on the table, but I like the idea of the front acre or whatever being commercial and the back being mixed use. Which I know is not on the table. So then that requires that I vote against mixed use, straight mixed use. Because maybe they won't be able to get a business in there, and then it becomes just housing. And Michael, I know you said we need more housing, and we do, and maybe that's the right choice. I don't know. So I guess I'm a little mixed on it, but I still like the idea. Go ahead, Michael.
I was just gonna say, we're not gonna, I think the consensus up here is not to say, keep that front portion commercial highway and then the back portion, the mixed use. We're gonna go with the recommendation as requested, the whole thing mixed use.
Right. No, I understand that you have to vote one way or the other. And
Yeah,
that's why I'm saying I like the idea of the front part commercial and the back not. So therefore, I feel like I have to vote against just straight mixed use because it might turn out not what we want.
okay.
I'd
Because-
like to vote,
Why do you think it wouldn't turn out like we want?
Well,
There's- sorry.
No, you're right here.
There's no way that it could be all housing with mixed use. It still
Right.
has to be a mixed
but it
use.
doesn't have to be commercial. It can be an office building and housing.
That's correct. That's correct.
It doesn't have to be retail. I
Does-
think that's one of,
Yeah.
I think it would help if we stuck with retail and non-retail or retail and
Okay.
commercial. Because I think that's confusing people sometimes on the commercial. Because commercial highway is retail based,
Okay,
Right, right.
general is the
Yeah.
gamut. And mixed use is kind of the gamut plus housing,
okay.
so.
Okay,
Which maybe the buyer buys it because we approve it as mixed use. And he tries to put retail at the front and he goes for a while and it doesn't work out. So then he just puts more housing there. And maybe that tells us, okay, it wasn't a good retail lot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Maybe
the
that's
max
true.
could be, the max retail could be 50%. And
Right.
so, and I think anybody be crazy to put the housing in the front. You would lose your potential for any retail or commercial.
No, I'm just saying if I buy that lot, for example, and I want to put retail on the front and I sit on it for 3 years and I can't get anybody to put a business there, I got to do something with the land.
But by this mixed use requirements, 50% of the property can be residential. So you could develop the back, but you're not gonna be able to continue forward to the front with that same thing. So that's one thing. One of the three options can be as much as 50%, but that's it. But so I think looking at that road and everything, that is a good spot for retail. Restaurant or otherwise, I think, because there's a lot of traffic that goes there. With the housing in the back. Any other comments,
Yeah.
anybody?
Just a couple of clarification points for me. So there is no restriction in mixed use for it to not be retail. You can't, it's not required to be retail, but you can put retail there, right?
You could put retail, but part of the requirement is that you have to have residential on
Right.
mixed use.
Right, but as far as flexibility goes, mixed use is far more flexible than highway commercial or general commercial. Right?
Yeah, because you're not gonna get any retail. I mean, excuse me, any residential
Right.
with those
So,
other two.
so I think there's no restriction for it meaning that you can't have retail. So I think the most flexible is to have the mixed use. And that allows you to use that land to the south. That you wouldn't really be able to use very well without another access for any other thing than residential. That's my feeling anyway.
Do you have any other questions, Bob? Anything that you would?
No, I don't have any questions. I'm not sure still that I would vote for it, but, I'll probably get outvoted, and that's fine. Because I get it, but, I would love to see Kent come back the next meeting and say, we want the first, based on their drawings, we want the first acre closest to Third South to be retail or commercial, highway commercial, and the back part to be mixed use, and I would definitely vote for that.
Okay. Scarlett, any technical advice there? Is that what we're doing? Is that what Kent's doing? Is he saying this front is retail?
If you were to do that, if they said that would be okay, then in theory, you would end up with more commercial requirement. Because you would, so you'd take, let's say you took the first acre and that was straight commercial highway.
Right,
So then that leaves you an acre and a half. Well, that acre and a half, no one use can be more than 50%.
yeah,
So of that acre and a half, they could still only have 50% of that be housing, and they
Yeah.
would still have to find offices or something
something
to
else.
fill the other. And keep in mind too, they do have to, all of the stuff has to fit in there, the parking, the bike parking, the EVC stations, the architectural demands, the open space demands. So all of that has to fit, which it can do. I mean, when they put that ordinance together, they looked at designs and it works. I think you were
Right.
there when
Yeah,
we did that. And so all of that stuff can work really well, even on smaller things. But if you were to do that, you would be increasing your commercial potential and decreasing your housing potential.
right,
Which would basically move you from half to a quarter.
Mhm.
The other one is to have multifamily housing in the back half and commercial in the front half.
right.
Yeah.
But I think to the applicant's point, you have one, I think you talked, I mean, I would give caution that you almost made a vote without making one. So because you've gone through and you've gotten a lot of those, you may be ready to see where that vote goes.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Shelley, anything to cut you off? Everything's okay? Bob, you all right to move forward?
Yeah, I just have one more question for Kent. So on his drawings on the partial, the piece of land that would be the office building and the housing, do you know, can you tell us a percentage of what the buyer was thinking? Was he thinking half and half? Was he thinking, maybe I missed that, more housing and just a small office building?
Kent, if you'd come to the microphone, please. Thank you.
I guess I need to apologize that we don't have a set drawing that,
Well, you're not required to.
well, but I
Right.
understand reservations, on your part that we came 2 weeks ago with this plan and we were hopeful that this plan would work, and what if it doesn't work? And then is our ultimate goal just to put, 300 apartments on that site? And no, that's not the ultimate goal. And I'm sorry, but I feel some concern over that. And we're dealing with a buyer who is a great individual, and he's just like the rest of us. If we buy something, we want, most of the time, we want it to be of value to us.
I just want to set the record straight here. I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that mixed use zone does not allow for only housing. It has to be.
Thank you. Thank you. And the commercial site that we're working with, this is the site that he's given us. the name that we don't know, is about 1.3 acres. So that's 1.3 acres. That's in just with this individual, but that's 1.3 acres out of 2.5 acres.
Right.
There isn't a lot of room left for the
Right.
accounting office. I'm guessing, and you know, if you look at the buildings across the street, you would know better than I would. 3,000 square feet, 2,500 square feet per space, probably.
Right.
So if you get one of those, and if you get a paint outlet store and something else, and maybe you've got 2 sixplexes that go in the back that are townhouses, and that might be all that you have.
Right.
Never in the conversation with the potential buyer has it been, hey, let's float this plan, but in the end, we really want to do 18 more
Yeah,
townhouses.
I don't think anybody thinks that, to be honest with you, Ken.
Okay,
I agree. And there's
But
not gonna be a lot of housing and it, you know, what portion that, because of the open space, all those requirements, but that's the next stage. Really is, the city council gives you the green light, then it's really all that design stuff that comes into place, which has been put together with things that are successful and they know that they work, so.
I would
Yeah.
guess that the current size of the accounting office is somewhere around, well, in fact, we had a conversation. Potentially, if he were to build a building, it would be around 3,000 square feet.
Okay. Sounds good.
And that's just if he builds a building for his own use and not has
Anything
another
else?
building attached.
Okay. Did that help you, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't say what if it'd be 50-50, but I'm
Yeah.
thinking it through more and I'm thinking if you have the retail in the front and then you do the mixed use in the back and you're only gonna have 2 items, they would each have to be 50-50, I guess. Is that right?
Well, no, the whole thing, I think the approach is gonna be we're coming forward. All of it mixed use. 50%, that one requirement, the biggest piece would be the retail up in the front. And then you'd have an office building portion behind that and then a small number of housing
Right,
options.
no, I get all that, and I know Kent's a good person and the buyer's a good person. I'm just saying that if you do mixed use, there's no guarantee there'll be any retail there.
It'll either be retail or commercial. Because mixed use has to carry those components, one of those 2 components.
But to his point, there is no guarantee
Right.
that there would be commercial.
There'd be.
Sales tax
He-
generating.
That's correct, yeah, sales
Yeah.
tax generating, that is correct to his point, that is correct.
So there wouldn't be, but
Okay.
there's gonna be 2 things there,
At least
Right.
two.
at least 2,
Right. But it could be an office building
right?
and housing, 50-50
That's correct,
or whatever.
right?
Yeah, but
Let me just state. There's an example of commercial in Hiram. As you enter Hiram, there are new townhouses that have been built. If anyone's been there the last couple of months, you see what's in front of them now. It's a commercial site. You come out of your townhouse door and walk about 10 feet and there's a 6-foot chain link fence with a rental equipment yard in front of it.
Mhm.
That's not what we have in mind.
Yeah,
I would be really ticked if I was one of the townhome owners and all of a sudden I'm looking, I like tractors, but I don't want them past a chain link fence.
Yeah.
So anyway,
okay,
thank
thank
you.
you, Ken. Any other comments, anybody?
No, I like Shelley's comment, we move on the application.
Okay, good. Well, then with that being said, I would move that, I would entertain a motion then at this point.
I'll make a motion. I make a motion that the planning commission recommend to the city council the approval of Champlin parcel 03-002-0007. Rezone application from commercial highway to mixed use. Subject to the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and conditions as set forth in the staff report.
I have a motion by Shelley Nazer. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Bob Washburn.
Chair, just to make
Yes.
sure that there's a clarification. This is a partial rezone of that parcel, is making sure that yours was a partial rezone and not the entire rezone of that parcel, which also includes the parcel that you talked about before that you had
asked.
you like me to restate that?
I just wanted to make sure that was
Yes.
part of it, if you just
Just
make
read
sure that.
what was on here, right?
Mhm,
Yeah,
yeah.
you just
Yeah.
read
I make a
I
motion
think
that the
we're-
planning commission recommend to the city council the approval of Champlin LLC partial rezone application.
I just wanted to make sure that clarification was on the record. So,
Okay, and we have the second. All those in favor,
I,
Aye.
Aye.
voting's unanimous. Well, for the motion carries for us to recommend to the city council to move forward based on the application. Thank you very much, Ken. And thank you, Bob. I know you may have to go, so if you do.
I do.
we-
I'm leaving now. It's been
Okay,
fun. Thank you.
enjoy the fishing hole.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Yeah, we'll get it on Wednesday, on next Wednesday.
Okay,
Thanks, everyone.
thank you.
thank you.
We have no administrative action at this time. We have one study item. Item number 4 on our agenda is the PCC 132 and PCC 1061 use charts and definition amendments. This is kind of in follow-up to the stuff we've done before that Bob and Brian worked extensively on, and I think it was just finishing up those charts that you guys had done all that work on. Is that right, Scarlett?
I don't think so.
no,
No,
was
that
just
was on,
different?
that was on,
accessory
yeah,
dwellings.
Okay.
this is the chart.
We did do some in the
Yeah.
definitions,
Okay,
and we did do some in the use chart. Well, some of the use chart relates to what we did, but
Okay.
we didn't really focus on that. This does include, if you look at page 2 of the staff report. Well, actually, you want me to talk now?
yeah, yes, we would be happy to invite you up to,
I'm sorry, I just
Or you
started
can-
yapping.
yeah,
Okay, if you'll look at page 2 of the use chart, or 2 of the staff report. On the bottom portion of that page, we did receive comments from a member of the public.
Right.
That was,
Okay.
and I believe she was in attendance at the meeting 2 weeks ago. And
okay,
so I did incorporate. Well, her comments are not incorporated into the changes. They are there in the staff report, so that if you want to consider them and incorporate them, you can. Now, the comments that I did incorporate into the changes are, Bob came and visited, like you had talked about in the last meeting. So he came and visited with me, and I made those changes.
Okay.
One change, and I have to apologize. I don't remember if it was Bob or if it was our resident, and I think it's really cool that they took the time to send that email to us, as detailed as it is. Ask about pallet sales. I did not put pallet sales on the use chart because they're a function of a commercial sale. I don't know. And if it was in a commercial district, they would be able to do it without it being on the use chart. I don't know. But if you feel like you want to call them out separately, then we certainly can call out pallet sales. But I don't think pallet sales fit like yard sales or estate sales. Pallet sales are, at least in the
yeah,
information that I looked at when I was doing my research, they're very much involved in commercial type. That's just stuff on a pallet.
buying this thing on the pallet.
Yeah. And it's not,
Yeah, that's an interesting thing because it's growing more and more.
and so, but I apologize, I did not put that one
Oh.
on, and I realized it after I'd sent the packets out, so.
No problem.
Maybe we could just include that language with yard sale or something in parentheses, pallet sale. I mean, I guess that wouldn't relate to when a business does it, but there are some times where it's just done on like a curb or something, a Amazon.
Yeah,
resale
well,
sale.
you're starting to see more and more where people are getting their business, they're buying multiple pallets from an organization or a wholesaler. And then they bring that product and sell it from there. I know we have one business in Providence where some of that happens that way. Sometimes he breaks down those pallets and has the items in his shop and stuff like that. But
But that's a commercial zone that he's doing that.
where he's doing that at. Do we have people? I don't know that we have people in their home. They open the garage door and I've got 6 pallets here, come on over.
I don't attend garage sales, so I don't know.
Estate sale, garage sale,
I've not
pallet,
seen, just driving through
Yeah.
neighborhoods,
yeah,
I've not seen a residential garage sale have
having pallets.
wrapped up pallets
Yeah.
that you just come and bid on.
Maybe we haven't got that far yet, but, yeah.
But we certainly can put them in and put a definition in as well, if you want me to add that. I apologize, I didn't get that in. So was that you, Bob, that asked about Palace Hills?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I apologize, I didn't get that one in until after I sent Ty the packet, then I realized I'd missed it, so.
So is pallet sales covered someplace? It's just not called out? I mean, is it considered a commercial? Does it need to be in here? Called out, or is it already covered? That was my question when I brought up pallet sales is,
I think the only reason we would need to call them out is if you wanted to allow them in residential areas. Because if the furniture store down here brought a bunch of pallet stuff in, or like the mattress warehouse, if they bring their pallet stuff in where they're in a commercial space and they have business licenses to sell, we're not going to distinguish, oh, they sold that off of a pallet versus they showed that off the showroom floor. But if you're going to start having pallets delivered to people's homes, I mean, because then you've got to have people with forklifts.
Can you tell me
Buyers
what's been
and sellers.
happening on Main Street? I think I saw a sign that referred to it as a pallet sale.
You did.
They have a pallet sale
Okay,
quite often.
But that corner, at that corner business.
yeah,
But that corner is in commercial zone.
okay,
So, but I'm saying if you were going to allow them in residential, by the nature of the beast, that it's a pallet sale, then you're going to know that forklifts are going to be involved in loading and unloading the pallets. And which makes it quite a bit different in my mind than a garage sale.
yeah.
While some people may buy enough at a garage sale, they feel like they need a backhoe or a forklift to transport it. If you did a true pallet, from what I've read about pallet sales, if you did true pallet sales, you would definitely be involved in forklifts and things like that. And if you're okay with that, that's great. I just didn't get it in there in time to talk about it.
I'd
So that's
prefer
why I
to
brought
keep
it.
that in the commercial area.
But well, I can add it just so that if you feel comfortable, I can add it and put it just in the commercial areas and, then we know it's covered.
Joe says if it's not in code, then it's
Allowed.
allowed, right?
That's what the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals told me. Supreme Court of Utah decided to follow it after the 10th Circuit announced it too. So.
And Scarlett, were you able to respond to this email from Mrs. Baker?
I thanked her for her comments and told her that I would include them.
Okay, I wonder if we should answer some of her questions.
Well, I kind of felt like they were questions more for you to answer than, that's why I didn't make the changes. But if you like her recommendations, you can certainly put them in.
I'm not seeing the comments. Where was it?
Page 2
Oh, page 2.
of the report, bottom of the page has an email from Mrs. Sue Baker.
2 of 11? Am I looking at it right?
It's this one here, the
Oh, wait.
staff
that's-
report, it's
Uh,
comments from public.
I'm sorry.
2 of 49.
Everybody-
If you want to look at it. Basically. Sue Baker submitted these questions. Go ahead and take it. Look how you need it. While Bob's reading that, what's your feeling on the first one about adjusting the definitions at a later time? I don't see that being much of a risk.
I don't either.
I'm glad she said it. Asked the question because I think it's a good question.
Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
But we have
Right
adjusted,
there.
I missed that somehow.
as we've gone through stuff, we have adjusted the definitions.
yes, yeah,
with the new
yeah,
code, so.
sort of what we're doing right now, right? Catching up.
Is it okay if you hear it clear
No, go ahead.
or you get it out?
Are you okay with taking notes? Yeah, apparently,
Sure.
so. So, did I not?
Yeah. Okay.
So
Sorry, Bob, we're gonna go ahead and excuse Michael from the meeting.
oh, okay,
He's not feeling well. I'll go ahead and finish running the meeting at this point.
okay, great,
Thank you, everyone.
hope you feel better,
Me too.
hope it's not contagious. I won't be after you.
Love your shirt though, Michael.
Thank you. It keeps me thinking of the islands where I'm not.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, sorry, Bob, go ahead.
No, so. I've just got myself confused between trying to bring in what we talked about in our last meeting. And. Maybe I didn't read through the stuff that's been updated, but. So from our last meeting, you and I sat down and you've made. Most of the changes that we talked about.
Mhm.
But I have one item that I wanted to talk about, that I wanted to recommend that we do something different. About, it's my practice to just read through the whole code when we're doing this, not just the red items.
Right,
So I read through the whole thing, and there is a lot of. Discussion in a lot of places about sexually oriented businesses. And there are references in definitions about that define a common term as a sexually oriented business. Because at one point we had things in separate sections. And we had all the sexually oriented business stuff in one section. So the code was referring specifically to that part of the code. Now the definitions are
Global, like a dictionary,
global,
like a
and-
dictionary,
pardon me?
like a dictionary.
Right. But some common kinds of, it defines common things as being sexually oriented, where it really isn't.
so,
And so, yes,
if you look at page,
okay, and that's what my problem is, I
oh,
didn't print that off and I
You
haven't
want mine?
looked at it, apparently.
I can bring mine up to you.
If you got a hard copy, that'd be handy. Let me come and get it so you don't have to walk. How's that?
So see how on page 20 right there in the red,
Yeah,
you asked me to highlight where it came from.
right.
So I just said in conjunction with,
Okay, in line 750, it's where you've got that, right? So. Did you do that on every place that it has a definition that is defines a term as sexually oriented business.
Not every single place, but when it's more of a generic term. Cause some of the terms actually are pretty explicit that they're sexual oriented. terms.
But
But
some of them,
On terms like this one, where it's more of a generic type term, yes, I did. In fact, on a couple of other pages where they were kind of generic terms, I put in connection with floodplain management or in connection with
okay,
whatever,
okay.
at
That's,
your request.
that was my concerns. There are definitions that were really kind of confusing to me, and there's a lot of interspersed throughout the whole thing is discussion about different definitions of sexually oriented businesses and stuff that in the general definition, I don't know, it just made me uncomfortable about having that just sprinkled throughout the whole code. But if we, like you mentioned here, the influential interest is in conjunction with a sexually oriented business. That was the thing that I said that I would bring up, that I thought we should do something about it. And this, if everybody else is okay with doing it that way, I guess that's fine. I'd kind of like to have that kind of subject matter all in one place. And
If you want to read a dictionary, those same things are in a dictionary. That's what
right, but
the code has been determined to have a dictionary section. Anytime you'd like to read a dictionary, it will have the same type of terms that you'd like to find.
Right. No, that, you're right. It's just that there were some things that were defined as in a very narrow way, like and you've got maintenance. The term maintenance means any activity that's necessary to keep stormwater facility in good working order. Well, maintenance means more than that. But this is in relation to stormwater. That makes sense. So, you know, it's kind of those kinds of things that just we're defining a term, or we have the same exact term defined twice, one right after another. And can we just kind of combine those? And that's, I think you did do that, right?
I did, or if they couldn't be combined, I put them
Associated with
then
a
associated
different
with-
subject. Okay, right. So those were some of the things that were that I thought we needed to do something with. And so if we can combine them, or if we can, if the term is a general kind of a term, like establish a business. Establish means a sexually oriented business. Well, established doesn't mean that. Established means that you open a business. Okay, so it just, there are terms that I thought we very narrowly defined in the definition of terms. And a lot of those narrow definitions were related to sexually oriented business. And it kind of grated on me after a while reading it.
Well, I guess two things from my side is one, we're looking for progress and not perfection. We're looking to move the code in the right direction, but you'll never get the proper code or you'll be here forever. And so I think that to go down that road is certainly admirable, but keep in mind that at some point you have to have some pieces of an elephant and you're not gonna eat them all. You're not gonna eat that elephant all at once. Secondly, I would encourage that if you want to change the definition, you should also go back and see how it's referred to in the code. And because if you search that, and if that's the only way that definition is actually used, then it may be actually correct, although you may say, oh, this definition could be used. the reverse of that, on an auditing side, that's what we do, is we will audit one direction, but also audit the other direction and say, and I don't know whether you've done that or not, but some of those that we ought to look at is saying, does our code refer to it in any different manner than the manner in which that definition is actually using? Because if it is, then it's actually maybe correct. It may be a broader term to be used in other spots, but in our code, if that's the only place that definition, and I don't know those, because I don't know all the definitions you talked about, but we may want to also follow that rabbit hole back to say, where and it and how are the uses of this definition, and are those properly used for what the definition is? Does that make
So
sense?
I think that's Bob's question. I mean, really, so for example, his example with maintenance, is maintenance mentioned anywhere else in the code other than stormwater?
Yeah, my understanding was you wanted to change the maintenance, and I didn't know whether you had gone back to.
No,
see if there
I
had been
didn't
reference.
go back. And that's an interesting concept that we only use a very narrow definition because we only talk about it in our code under this subject, but I was confused by a lot of things. And I just kept writing over and over. This is such a narrow definition. I don't know why. Or we have two terms with exactly the same title defined. So I was really confused. And there's, so anyway, that was my,
Yeah, and I
my
see that
concern.
confusion. I think the use of a dictionary is oftentimes when you're reading the code and you come across a word or a usage, then what you will normally do, what I normally do, I don't normally read the dictionary.
Well, I don't normally read the dictionary.
I normally will read the code, and if I have a question of, well, how is this used? What is this term and how is it defined? Then I will reference back to that dictionary and say, okay, I am looking at this wording as used in the code, and it is using a definition. I go towards that definition. If there are a couple of times it's used, I might look and say, well, how is it defined? And if we have multiple and that's confusing, then we should clear those up clearly. But that's my reading of it, and how oftentimes we go through and we're doing code, we're looking at what the code section is and then finding better definition or better guidance on that definition by referencing up to that dictionary. So sometimes it is for being more specific than what the code was. We're getting a second layer, sometimes going into that definition. Does that make sense? I mean, I think it can be used both ways, but if you're going from definition to code, I think maybe in that same review, you probably need to go back and say, well, where is that? And if there's specific ones, we're not gonna solve them all. Certainly, I think you gotta figure out some scope that you want to define and go down so that we can see if this is appropriate. And then, if you wanna pick on the A's, the last day was that we went by chapter, title and chapter through the code so that we could address those pieces at a time. But I think if you wanna go down that full depth, you probably have to see what plan are you gonna have so that you don't get bogged
Right.
down in every different definition. And I mean, at this point, you have less than half of your full body here and you're looking in a fairly deep.
We're studying the item.
No, I know, but at some point, maybe instead of studying the detail here, maybe set the plan of how you're going to accomplish the review. Maybe talk about, well, how do you want to eat this elephant? I guess that's my question. Instead of going to every definition here, how do you want to eat this elephant?
That's fair enough, because I just read through the definitions and I wasn't happy. So I had a very singular thing. This is what we were given to review, so that's what I reviewed. And I had a lot of comments about different things, and Scarlett and I went over most of them, or we went over all of them. And there was just I wanted to bring something up about that. There's one other thing that, and I don't know, did you change? Or do we have a separate definition for, bed and breakfast and short-term rental? Or are we still defining that as the same thing?
We have, I can't remember how I changed it.
Let's see.
Do you have a
Well,
line that you want us to go to on that one?
well, I don't know on the new one.
Yeah, in the chart, she changed it, it said bed and breakfast, comma, residential slash short-term rental, that's in the chart. I don't see short-term rental mentioned anywhere else.
There's page,
1178. short-term
on page 31 and
So
41.
we didn't change anything.
Are we looking at 152? What line are we looking at?
1178 in the new one,
1178.
1178.
Well, that's short-term rental. If you don't wanna call it bed and breakfast, then I guess we can take that completely out and just use the state code term of short-term rental. But we probably should have short-term rental defined.
Yeah.
Because of the state code defines it, so that's why I think short-term rental just refers you back to bed and breakfast.
And, right. And that was,
Which incorporates the state code definition of short-term rental is less than 30 days.
so. Okay, so my question was with short-term rentals. Which are happening, we've had citizen input telling us this happens all the time. Somebody buys a townhome and they use it as a short-term rental. On Airbnb, whatever, I don't know how they find it, but there's no owner occupancy. And seems to be a requirement, is that, and so that was one of the things I wanted to bring up, is that something that we want to require, and how do we enforce that?
Well, under the business license ordinance, it's not there yet, but there is a proposed ordinance for short-term rental. But the council chose to delay talking about that. So, but people still wanna do it. And we actually, we allowed the bed and breakfast thing before there was such a term as short-term, before short-term rental became a big deal. We had already allowed bed and breakfast residential and bed and breakfast inn. We already had kind of separated that into, okay, if you're gonna do it commercial bed and breakfast, that's more like a little mini motel, this is what we're gonna do. And if you're gonna do it more like a owner occupied in-house, rent my house while I'm out on vacation and renting somebody else's house, then that's the residential one. So we had already had that in our code, so then when the state came out with all the short-term rental stuff, we just incorporated that into the bed and breakfast. That's been kind of confusing to people, so that's why adding the term in here. But as far as the rules governing the short-term rentals, that's at the council, if they choose to want to continue with it. It's in their hands under the business license.
Oh, that's a requirement under the business license, not,
Yeah.
not in the code.
Not in the zoning part of the code.
Or this definition piece that we're talking about now.
It's a function in the business license.
So that's the question that I had. These definitions, they apply not only to the land use code,
They apply throughout.
throughout the,
Right.
and so, and not to be, I don't know what the right word is, but I focusing on the word nude or nudity. Where you've added in conjunction with a sexually oriented business. Doesn't that affect part of the criminal code for nude or nudity? I mean, if we're saying that's only for sexually oriented businesses, then we're undefining nude or nudity for any other purpose other than the sexual oriented business.
Well, so what happened is generally in code, the definitions are within a particular code for that particular code because that's where the context is. Taking all the definitions out of the particular chapter, the particular title and chapter, and putting them to one makes sense because they're all in one place. That's where you can go look. You can go look down that whole thing.
I agree
But
with
it
you.
also takes them out of context to a degree. Because when you're reading the code on floodplain management. And you're looking at the terms in there, you know you're talking about floodplain management. If you're talking about grading and construction management, and you're looking in Title 11 in subdivision ordinance, and it's talking about maintenance, then you know you're talking about that there in the subdivision code. But if you move both of those out and you put them together in the definitions, then when you read them, that's what confused Bob to a degree was, why are we talking about stormwater management and then talking about construction management? And it's because they were defined, same term defined differently and depending on the title that it was under. So the context of the title,
But maybe I'm not making myself clear because I guess what I'm saying is if someone walks down the street in their birthday suit. And isn't that a crime in this city? Underneath our code?
That could be a state crime and would be under their definitions.
we
Well,
don't,
We could look to see if that's a crime, but lots of the crimes are state defined crimes, right?
I've been a prosecutor, I know that.
Understand?
I don't know that I don't think we have a chapter on lewdness. So somebody walked down the street, we would go to the state code, we would call the sheriff's deputies and ask them to come and cite under state code, not under city code. I don't think we have anything about that, but we do have to have a chapter about sexually oriented business because we have to allow them. And so state code tells us we have to allow, since we have to allow them, we had to have a chapter on them. And we had to use those definitions. But we didn't have the in conjunction with before. Bob just asked me if I could do that because he felt like there needed to be context as to what that related to.
Sure. If I haven't read the city code, because I'm only on the planning commission, I'm not
Yeah,
in charge of it or want to be in charge of anything else.
Yeah.
But if that's the only place that definition applies, then you've answered my question and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanna kind of get back on track and let me ask about our scope, right? Our scope, we have this whole definition chapter in front of us that we're looking through, but our scope really is planning and land use. Is that right? So I think it would be best if we could focus on those definitions. And then we could definitely raise concerns or take ideas to the city council meeting when they review the remainder of the chapter.
Take him as a citizen.
I think so. Wouldn't you agree?
I wouldn't disagree.
But yeah, I mean, that's a way to do it. That certainly is.
I think so. Would you like to continue to study this item? Would you like to do another committee?
No, not necessarily. If we want to just stick with the land use stuff, that makes sense. That's what our job is, right? It's just you put all this stuff in front of me, so I feel like I have to read it and then I have a bunch of questions and want to make changes.
No, I agree with you. It's good and we always want to make improvements, right?
So, short-term rental. Is that a land use thing? Is that?
I will tell you, I just did a dictionary or a search. In the current code, now it might be later, but this is the proposal for adding rental, short term. That term, short term, isn't used in our code. So to define it, you can define it as something other than bed and breakfast, but currently it's not referenced.
But it's, part of this exercise is to bring everything up to state code, right?
Yeah,
But if we're not using the word just to define it, you're not using it.
Oh, we're not using it in our code,
Right.
okay? Should we?
I don't know. I don't know. But at some point, maybe when we use the word, we certainly should define the word, if it's an undefined word. But anyway,
and
that
we
was
do
just a
use bed and
exercise.
breakfast. That is mentioned in the
Yes.
code and reference.
Yeah, bed and breakfast is used.
So I think that would just be a suggestion from us in the planning commission is that when we do start using short-term rental, or maybe we need to start using short-term rental rather than bed and breakfast where it's coming, into the new age.
I've clearly overstepped what my job is.
No, that's okay. What else do you
So-
have for us, Bob?
I think I've covered everything with Scarlett, and I'm gonna have to see why I didn't read through this. But, I think we're good. What I've seen so far, she's done exactly what we talked about, so.
My question would be on the use chart itself. Do you want to make changes? Or do you agree with the changes in the use chart? Or do you want to make changes to those recommendations? Or do you want to make changes that I didn't do? Because the use chart is definitely under land use.
I think you've done good work here. Catching us up to date. I personally, I still think it's a little hard to read. Some shading, some coloring would be nice to see, but I know that can be difficult. I do appreciate adding short-term rental to the bed and breakfast line. We've got the micro school and micro education entity. Did those get added in the definitions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Okay, so the question is,
How do you like the use chart?
this is a study item. Everybody else studied it too? No other comments?
I think since it's gotta come back as
It's a
an
hearing.
agenda, I don't know if we have to have a hearing on it, but
You
we
do,
have to put it on the agenda
Yeah.
for action.
you do have to have a public hearing for a land use.
Yeah, you're right.
Would we put it on the agenda item for us to approve prior to taking it to a hearing, or would it go from this step straight to a hearing?
If you're satisfied with the general idea, and now you would like to present that to the public, then you have to have the public hearing before you can make a recommendation to the city council. So if
Then we
you're,
have an opportunity after the public hearing to make
Make
changes, taking into
Okay.
consideration what the public,
Right,
or we discuss.
Yeah.
So
okay,
I'm in a position where I'd make a motion if the chair would entertain it to have it set for a public hearing.
But I will entertain a motion.
Then I move to make a motion for a public, that this be moved to a public hearing.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a quorum. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that takes care of our final agenda item. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to discuss this evening?
No.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I brought up to, Michael. I think that he was going to say something, but I brought up to Michael earlier that, the first meeting in July, according to our, bylaws, we are supposed to have an election for chair and vice chair.
Great.
And I would recommend that we all take a glance at the bylaws periodically, and so I was just looking at them because I knew that in July we're supposed to do something. So, you know, it's probably a good idea. There's a lot of good information in there before our next meeting or our first meeting in July. That we take a look at that and be prepared to have the election.
I think that's a great idea. Ty, will you add that to the agenda for next meeting?
The July meeting, yeah.
Yes. Do we have the bylaws are not on the agenda? It's the
No, they're not.
duties and responsibilities and the order and decorum. Okay.
If you go under planning
Okay,
commission.
no, I've been there and I agree with you. I agree with you. It's something good to review. And a good idea to suggest to the rest of the commission.
Did you wanna put a review of the bylaws on the next, or you just wanna put the election on the next agenda? What were you asking specifically for?
The election on the July
Just
meeting.
the election, I think, for the
Okay.
agenda. And just a suggestion in general, that it's a good thing to review the bylaws periodically and
Just on their own individually.
just
before they come in.
individually, yeah, just so that you're familiar with it, we have an obligation to do something in the first meeting in July, so.
Thanks for the reminder. All right, anything else?
I move that we end our meeting.
So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
And we adjourn. Thank you.
Scarlett, can I just keep this hard copy? You okay with that?
Yep.
Thank you.